hand off that weapon. This is private property.
Let's take a look at Nocturnal Animals versus Wind River. So as always, before we start, we need to evaluate why we are going to compare these two films. Both of these films feature a protagonist who becomes partnered with an individual in law enforcement. They become integral in an investigation. Both films are primarily character-driven, and they rely heavily on suspense. Beyond simple plot points, both of these films have an element of rural danger. Characters are often on their own and frequently find themselves in dangerous situations in which help is nowhere to be found. Overall, the tones of these two films are very similar to one another. In order to properly compare these two films, we are going to take a look categorically. 5 categories have been selected that each film does well. The categories for this comparison will be the protagonist, the supporting characters, the overall theme, the amount of tension, and the climax. Whichever film wins the majority of these categories will be declared the winner.
Tried to be very careful.
I should have stopped it. I should have stopped it.
Nocturnal Animals essentially has 2 parallel protagonists because the film has 2 parallel plot lines. There's the modern-day real plot line that features Amy Adams' portrayal of Susan, who is a successful owner of a modern art gallery. Susan is the reader of the fictional plotline. She is afflicted with insomnia and clearly suffers from significant guilt. Tony is a father and husband. He shares many of the same character traits with Edward. He is confronted with a horrible situation, but he's unable to bring himself to act. It is only after tragedy has struck and being approached by Bobby, a dying cop, that he begins to adapt into taking action. Edward exemplifies significant emotional turmoil as the rape and death of his family is discovered. He finds himself in a situation in which he is aiming a gun at 2 of the perpetrators, but again, he fails to act. He finally overcomes his inaction at the climax of the film. He displays significant anger, elegantly mixed with distress from Gyllenhaal's excellent performance.
I should have stopped it. I should have protected him. I should have seen it coming. I should have stopped it. I should have stopped it.
We witness a slow and tumultuous progression from a character who fails to act to a character driven to action in order to attain revenge. Wind River features Corey. Corey is a stark contrast to Edward. Corey is a capable, solitary, calm and collected hunter who is asked for assistance by Jane Banner, an FBI agent. He guides Jane through the harsh winter and offers a more direct approach in her investigation. His knowledge of both the land and the culture demonstrates his utility. There is a parallel with Corey's purpose for assisting in the investigation. We learn that he and his wife had lost a daughter who was of a similar age to Natalie. Beyond that, Corey was close with Natalie and her family. He has multiple interactions with her father throughout the film. It becomes evident that this investigation is a cathartic experience for Corey. He seeks to find justice for a girl who undoubtedly reminded him of his daughter.
Tried to be very careful with Emily. Tried to plan for everything. She was such a good girl.
Although Corey's skills and general personality make him intriguing, his catharsis is not quite as dynamic as Edward's struggle with both his failure to act and his grief. We witness significant character growth with Edward that surpasses that seen in Wind River. Susan experiences a similar character arc as she realizes that she is slowly becoming her mother, someone who demonstrated qualities she significantly detested.
You and I are a lot more alike than you think.
Because of these two more complex character arcs compared to Corey's relatively standard character arc, Nocturnal Animals will win this category.
Look,
I got nothing to lose.
I don't know
I'm
how
not
to
gonna
do
let
this,
this
okay?
asshole DA
I'm not a
fuck up my
tracker.
last case.
For supporting characters, Nocturnal Animals has a good amount of supporting characters due to its parallel plot lines. Edward is an author who has been disengaged from his long-term relationship with Susan. His story is largely lived through his book, which he has sent to Susan. Edward is a man of sensitivity who has struggled with Susan as a result of his lack of ambition.
I mean, what, you gonna work at a bookstore and just write a novel? Like, that's what you want to do with your life?
We see him attempt to cling to his marriage due to a dream that they once shared, but he ultimately finds that she has moved on, prompting him to write a much different kind of book.
Oh my God, no. Edward.
Michael Shannon portrays Bobby, a terminally ill sheriff who offers to kill the suspected perpetrators due to a lack of evidence to convict. He struggles with his illness as he guides Tony towards his vengeance. However, to Bobby, this is about serving justice. We learn that Bobby is estranged from his child, leaving this act as the only thing left in his life before his death. Bobby exemplifies an interesting character who provides a stark contrast to Tony. He's a man of action. He is willing to break the rules to get what he wants, and is an exceptionally capable stoic.
What do you want me to do with Ray and Marcus?
But what can you do with him?
Anything you goddamn like.
I got nothing to lose. I'm not gonna let this asshole DA fuck up my last case.
Aaron Taylor Johnson's Ray provides an excellent antagonist to the story. He is completely unlikable and a true predator. He manipulates and intimidates Tony from the beginning of the story. He gloats, he challenges Bobby, and he continues to take advantage of Tony throughout the story. Aaron Taylor Johnson's portrayal of body language and small sounds perfectly complements this role. Wind River features only small roles in addition to Jeremy Renner's Corey, due to the wilderness nature of the setting. The largest supporting role is that of Jane, an FBI agent sent to lead the investigation of Natalie's death. Jane is inexperienced and completely unfamiliar with both the land and the culture of her new setting. She recognizes this deficit and eventually asks Corey for his help. Jane actually exemplifies more character growth than Corey due to her progressive finding of her abilities, and this allows her to become more assertive and to take the lead. She is initially only a follower to Corey, but finds herself single-handedly attempting to defuse a dangerous situation.
FBI! Hey, FBI! This is federal land and I am the only authority, okay? Right now, all of you stand down!
As well as handling danger on her own. We learn of the reservation's culture alongside Jane, and we see her abilities persistently improve, making her a dynamic and relatable character. Jane is an exceptional character, but Nocturnal Animals simply has too many supporting characters, all of which are dynamic and intriguing to the story. Although Wind River eventually identifies an antagonist, Nocturnal Animals' Ray is a powerful and gut-wrenching villain that pushes Nocturnal over the edge. Nocturnal Animals has multiple themes going on that are largely displayed through the characters. One theme is weakness. We see this in Edward due to his sensitivity, and in Tony in his inability to act.
You're too weak.
Susan has a theme of guilt. She realizes that she's becoming her mother. She seeks mainly ambition and money, and this leads her to guilt after she achieves this realization.
In a few years, all these bourgeois things, as you so like to call them, are going to be very important to you.
Revenge is prominent, both with Edward and Tony. Edward's revenge seems almost manipulative due to having Susan go to an agreed-upon time of place for dinner, and subsequently standing her up, while Tony's is more traditional, in killing the person who has wronged him. There is also Bobby's theme, which is justice. He says himself,
It's a question of how serious you are about seeing justice done.
he wants to accomplish this before his inevitable death, providing an interesting sub-theme to the main characters. The overarching theme of Nocturnal Animals could be said to be getting even, but it comes at a cost. Wind River features a true theme of the dangers of the wilderness. We are repeatedly reminded of the dangers of the land and being on your own. There is a theme of the impending loss of the reservation's identity. A loss of one of their own is at the hands of a contracted security company, and an outsider FBI agent is the one sent to investigate. Corey is even purported as only being accepted because of his marriage.
This land is all we got left.
This is we shit. One thing native about you is your ex-wife.
Nocturnal Animals displays more sub-themes, but these tend to blend with character traits. The overarching theme of revenge directly impacts both conclusions. However, this theme tends to waver in the midst of the implementation of other sub-themes. Wind River's theme remains prevalent throughout the entire film. The looming danger and the presence of the outsider is a central point of the entire plot. As a result, Wind River will take theme. Both of these films are a masterful depiction of tension. Nocturnal Animals demonstrates tension in some key scenes. The first is a long, uncomfortable scene when Tony is forced off of the road by Ray. We know that something is wrong. We know that danger is coming, but we do not know when. We wonder if Tony will act, and we are offered no relief. Nocturnal offers tension again when Bobby holds up the suspects, but then he has to go to the bathroom to vomit. Tony is left with the gun and is again confronted with his action. This scene is brief, but equally uneasy. The climax of the film offers additional tension. Again, Tony finds himself alone with Ray. He's holding a gun, and there is another, yet brief, standoff scene. Wind River offers the single most tension in a standoff scene. The reservation police approach a security company's trailers. All members are armed. A cop notices that one of the security guards is flanking him, and everyone pulls their weapons.
Put the fucking gun down right now! Put it down! Yell it! Drop your knee right now!
There is screaming, there is anticipation, there is chaos, there is confusion, and we have no idea what will happen. Perhaps most compelling is that Jane is able to de-escalate the standoff, but the tension immediately returns, resulting in a massive gunfight.
Jane, get away from the door!
Wind River again offers significant tension when Jane investigates the home of suspects. There is clearly something off the moment that she speaks to the first individual. He has a sinister look in his eyes. He proceeds to blind her, and Jane finds herself in a dangerous environment, out of her element, and on her own in the house.
I got it right here.
Wait, let me see your hands. Let me see.
Nocturnal Animals offers excellent looming tension, but it never quite achieves the true edge-of-your-seat feel that Wind River accomplishes. This allows Nocturnal Animals more persistence, but we do not quite feel danger to the extent that we do in Wind River. In Nocturnal Animals, Susan continues to feel lonely and isolated. Revenge is achieved by standing her up for a dinner date. She sits alone at a table, and the audience is left to wonder why he has not come to see her. In the fictional story, Tony's revenge costs him his life. Was this because his purpose was fulfilled, or are we commenting on the cost of revenge? Is this a full conclusion? Have we seen character growth? Tony has, but Edward and Susan have minimal dynamic growth. They are repeating their mistakes to an extent. This leaves much of the character's actions up to our own interpretation. What's interesting about Nocturnal Animals' climax is, one, there's multiple layers to this character development. In the fictional world, it's a much more simple and concrete climax, while in the real world, it's very non-traditional, and it keeps the gritty tone. In Wind River, the conclusion is action-packed, and it wraps up the plot. The gunfight ends, the suspect is essentially apprehended, and justice is served. The theme is wrapped up.
There's no one left to teach her.
Although the theme remains consistent, there isn't any major growth given to us for either Corey or Jane. Nocturnal Animals poses interesting questions regarding one's character traits and motivations. The ending doesn't feel good, but neither did most of the film. The characters remain within their framework, and some of them grow. This difference in character growth offers us very interesting contrasts. Due to its more dynamic endings, Nocturnal Animals wins this category.
Stay away! You want to?
Oh my God, no.